The Walten files can be very jarring to piece together as all its pieces are vaguely spread out throughout episodes, websites, and Discord channels. I collected all of them and spent the last month of my life piecing them all together into a coherent timeline. This timeline is filled with theories of my own, but I'll be making it clear when I talk about facts or theories. So without further ado, let's dive into the Walten files timeline. It all started with a man named Jason Pooltrick. Jason was a man of passion, a man who would do anything to explore and push the limits of modern entertainment technology. He pursued this passion in 1943 by starting a project called Cyberfun-Tech, which focused on just that. This project grew beyond his imagination when they developed something called the Advanced Jackpot System, which sold like hotcakes. This made it possible for him to scale his business up from a small research team to a fully fledged company. Collaborations were flying in left and right, as everyone seemed to want something from this business. But this was sadly something that Jason didn't get to enjoy for very long, as he seemed to have passed away in 1952 to heart failure. He left his company to his son, Norman Pooltrick, only 9 years after founding it. Which is what they want you to think. I think there is something sinister going on behind the screens, something they're trying to hide from us. For my proposition to make sense, we first have to talk about an article about a man named Jonathan Ferrell. This article tells us about something called material interaction, which is just a fancy way to describe that someone who has passed away can haunt an object. We can see this material interaction time and time again in the Walten files, with Edd and Molly possessing the rocket doll, or when Jack appears to tamper with the tapes we're watching throughout the series. I think we can all agree that Bon is another case of material interaction. How this bit of information ties in with Cyberfun-Tech and the passing of their CEO might surprise you. The death of Jason Pooltrick was something his sons couldn't deal with. The sudden loss of their father made them willing to try anything to get him back. They eventually found out about material interaction and decided to take the risk. They set everything up to open a gateway for spirits to pass through, with the hopes that their father would return to them. This decision, however, changed their lives forever, as the spirit that passed through wasn't the version of their father they once knew. It was an evil, twisted version that tried to corrupt their minds by planting a personality in them which they actively have to repress, a shadow man. Now you may have noticed that I kept saying sons as a plural, while we've been told that Norman is Jason's only son. This is because I think there was a second son that was kept secret. Hear me out. The episode Bunny Farm tells us about a certain hippo. This hippo was the original owner of the town the game is taking place in. He promised his sons that he would create the best quality barn in the world. I think this hippo represents Jason, the original owner of the Cyberfun-Tech. But the sign on the statue dedicated to him talks about 2 sons, while we only know about Norman. Who could the other son be? Alright, stay with me as I'm about to take you on a whole other goose chase. I think his other son is nobody other than Felix Kranken. Now I can already hear you typing, but his name is Kranken, not Pooltrick. This doesn't make any sense. I'm unsubscribing. That's because you never heard of a person called William Godley. The tragedy of William Godley starts with a group called the Ponzis, who were hired by Felix Kranken to develop the Showstoppers' first album. They were forced to spend ungodly hours in the recording studio to produce the music we all know and love, until one unlucky day changed his life forever. William left the recording studio after a long day of work, where he was held up by 2 thieves. These thieves beat him to the point he started getting severe anxious fits, which were treated with a certain medicine that gave him indefinite amnesia. These pills made him completely forget who he was, as he started referring to himself by the name Ronnie Felix Bourgeoisie. He also forgot his birthday, thinking he was born in 1969 instead of 1952. These pills make you completely forget your entire identity and history, which is exactly what I think happened to Felix Kranken. Felix was stuck with the entity we know as the Shadow Man after trying to get his father back. This entity constantly tried to corrupt his mind into doing evil things, but Felix tried his best to never give in. He had nowhere else to turn than to seek professional help, so he admitted himself to therapy, with hopes of getting rid of this sickness. This is where he was prescribed the same medication as William Godley, and I think you can already see where I'm going with this. Felix completely forgot his old identity. This disconnected him enough from all the evil in his past that he was only haunted by flashes of said past. These flashes didn't stop Felix from pursuing the same passions as his relatives. We learn about his passion for children's entertainment when he talks about starting an animatronic-themed restaurant with his best friend Jack Walten. The duo spent countless hours drafting up everything they need to make their dream a reality. They eventually found a venue that fit their wishes, and with Jack's wife Rosemary drawing all the concept arts for the animatronics, all they needed was a company willing to build them. This is where they found Cyberfun Tech and asked them for their support, not knowing this was the first step to their downfall. The corrupted spirit of Jason latched back onto Felix as soon as he contacted Cyberfun Tech for help. This caused Felix major distress as he did not know the reason he appeared to be haunted by this intimidating spirit. He eventually turned to alcohol to calm the nerves, which seemed to help for the time being, but his wife's diary tells us that it was getting progressively worse. It reads, "Felix has been acting weird lately. He's been drinking more than usual. He came home at 4 a.m. He was crying. He seemed very unstable and stressed. This alcoholism reached its peak when his wife left him because of it. This also happened to be the day that he was tasked to pick up Jack's two youngest children, Edd and Molly. But due to the amount he drank, the Shadow Man was able to take control of the car and crash it, ending both Edd and Molly's lives. This is reaffirmed by the fact we get to see four faces at the moment of the car crash. These are, of course, Edd and Molly, then Felix, and lastly, this uncanny husk of a man, the Shadow Man. Jason took possession of the Bon animatronic and waited till each of the people listed made their way into the back rooms of the restaurant. He started by stuffing Jack into the Bon animatronic, then Susan into Banny, Charles into Buzu, and Rosemary into Shaw. Rosemary, however, was way louder than any of them expected to be, which caused the surrounding businesses to call the police who raided the restaurant. Norman was prepared for this and had his employees lock the back rooms before the police arrived. This threw a wrench in his plans as he knew he needed to act fast since the police were onto whatever was going on in the restaurant, so he had Bon try to dispose of his last victim, Sophie. But things didn't go according to plan when the spirits of Edd and Molly managed to stop Bon from taking Sophie. Norman, now completely out of options, had all the animatronics moved to the K9 storage facility and threw Sophie in there too while he thought of all his options. She was given the same pills as Felix was in hopes she would forget about all the events happening. This way they could keep her alive without needing to worry about her ever finding out about what really happened to her family. We can tell this is the case from a couple clues. The first one is in episode 1 during a segment called Bon's Sleepover. Here we can see little Bon invite all his friends over for a sleepover. As they're all sitting on the couch watching TV, we can spot a pill bottle with the name Sophie Walten on it. Later that night, we can see little Bon waking up to check out a suspicious noise. That scene ends with Sophie literally taking the place of little Bon. But that's not all. We can see little Bon in Mr. Hippo's house in the episode called Bunny Farm. Here little Bon has to distract Mr. Hippo to collect a key. This key leads to an empty room where it can be seen that little Bon wanders around for a while. I think this is another representation of Sophie being in the K9 facility. Wandering around this long caused her pills to wear off slightly, which helps her to see things for how they really are. The lively spirits of the two little hippos and the Banny in the corner are now without movement, without life. The nail in the coffin happens when she has the shocking discovery of what's behind door number 3. For this to make sense, we first need to go over the time Shaw talks about this door. Shaw is giving us a tour of the K9 facility in the second episode called Relocate Project. She goes into one of the rooms and explains what the 3 doors are for. The first door being for cleaning supplies, the second one being for merchandise. But when she gets to the third one, it terrifies her to the point where she can't even voice her words. She just stares at the camera in horror. This is the door we see Sophie enter in Bunny Farm. Behind this door is a mini-game where little Bon has to fit all the pieces together. This is another representation of the combination of being off her medication for so long, with the discovery of the bodies inside the animatronics, which caused her to literally piece it all together. This realization caused her extreme anxiety, but she grabbed her pills and escaped the facility. She found residence in the Enfant Hotel where she remains to this day. This timeline is the best I could come up with the pieces we currently have. The Walten files is still filled with mystery and unanswered questions. I look forward to seeing what the series will have to offer in the future, but we'll have to be patient for that. If you have any problems or questions about this timeline, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.